Have you noticed that some people suddenly begin to change in silence? Without making noise, they stop going to certain places, stop repeating old habits, and no longer engage in superficial conversations. It is as if an inner call, subtle yet powerful, guides them toward a path where the old no longer fits. This phenomenon is not just subjective. It can be observed in choices, in new practices spreading quietly across the world. The search for meditation, spiritual retreats, Eastern traditions, and philosophies beyond religion is growing everywhere. More and more people refuse to define themselves by religious labels and instead see themselves as spiritual seekers. Even the economy reveals what is happening behind the scenes of collective consciousness. The global sector connected to self-knowledge and spirituality is expanding rapidly. This is not just commerce, it is a reflection of humanity responding to an invisible call, a call that cannot be explained only with numbers but can be felt in the skin by those who begin to awaken. Perhaps you are already experiencing this. Perhaps you have noticed that some things have lost their meaning, as if your soul simply refuses to take part in certain dynamics of the collective reality. That is the sign of awakening. In this video, we will reveal the things awakened souls silently leave behind when they respond to the subtle touch of awakening. Be prepared. Some of them may deeply surprise you. Subscribe to this channel now, because what you are about to hear is rarely explained so clearly, so deeply, and yet so accessibly. Most people live without ever questioning the reality they inhabit. They believe the world is exactly as it was presented to them. Study, work, pay bills, consume, grow old, and finally disappear. This cycle seems unquestionable, as if it were the only way to exist. But awakened souls begin to notice something unsettling. Much of this reality is not natural, but constructed. It is a structure created by the repetition of beliefs, traditions, and narratives reinforced generation after generation. This is what we call the collective reality, a silent agreement in which everyone accepts to live according to patterns they never consciously chose. In modern spirituality, many refer to this system as the matrix. And what is the matrix, after all? It is an invisible set of conditionings that shapes thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It is not only political, nor only social. It seeps into how people see themselves, how they love, how they relate to time, and even how they perceive life itself. The matrix is fed by collective fears, the endless pursuit of status, the illusion of consumption, and the attachment to rigid beliefs. It is a prison without visible bars, yet it traps millions of minds. When a soul awakens, it begins to see the cracks in this construction. Things once accepted become uncomfortable. The superficiality of conversations, the emptiness of social rituals, the relentless demand to fit into patterns. This is the first moment of stepping away, not from people, but from the illusions that shape the collective reality. Spiritual awakening is a turning point in anyone's life. It is not necessarily a sudden moment of mystical enlightenment, but rather a gradual process in which perception expands and consciousness begins to see beyond appearances. Suddenly, ordinary life feels strange. The daily routine no longer satisfies. Usual conversations sound empty, and an existential void gives way to deeper questions. Who am I, truly? What am I here to do? Is there something beyond this reality I was taught to believe in? It is at this moment that the first signs of stepping away appear. Awakened souls no longer find pleasure in superficial distractions, lose interest in certain forms of entertainment, and begin to seek experiences that nourish the soul. Silence, knowledge, connection with nature, spiritual practices. This shift does not happen out of arrogance, but because the soul no longer resonates with what once felt comfortable. And here is something important. If you feel this, you are not alone. This channel exists precisely to create a space of connection among seekers going through this same transition. Awakening often brings a sense of isolation, as if no one around you understands what you are experiencing. But by sharing your experience in the comments, you may not only find others who feel the same, but also inspire those who are just beginning their journey. So I invite you now, write in the comments if you have felt this inner calling. The simple act of expressing it can strengthen your own path and build an invisible bridge with other awakened souls here with us. Everything in the universe is energy. Every object, every thought, every emotion vibrates at a certain frequency. This is not only a spiritual statement but a scientific one. Modern physics shows that matter, at its core, is made up of energy fields in constant motion. When a soul awakens, something begins to change in this subtle field. It starts vibrating at higher frequencies, linked to feelings such as compassion, gratitude, and inner clarity. This shift is silent, yet noticeable. Awakened people find it difficult to stay in environments filled with tension, violence, or superficiality. Places and situations that once felt normal now seem heavy and draining. It is as if the soul can no longer sustain the old resonances. Think of a radio station. Once you change the dial, you can no longer hear the previous frequency. The same happens here. Awakening is not only psychological, it is a vibrational change that completely alters the way reality is perceived and experienced. This is one of the reasons why so many awakened souls begin to step away from certain experiences without giving long explanations. It is not rejection, but simply energetic incompatibility. Where there is dissonance, the soul cannot remain. So far, we have spoken about the illusion of the collective reality, about spiritual awakening, and about the vibrational shift that happens when the soul begins to follow its inner calling. But now, I want you to pay very close attention. What we are exploring here is not ordinary content. It is a revelation that few people truly understand. Awakened souls silently leave behind habits, environments, and beliefs that once seemed unquestionable, and this movement changes the course of life. That is why I want you to stay fully present until the very end of this video. Every detail matters. What will be revealed in the next chapters may bring clarity to situations you are living right now but have not yet been able to name. This channel does not exist to repeat what you can easily find anywhere else. Here, every subject is addressed with depth and precision, so you can access a true understanding of your spiritual journey. If you feel that this content speaks directly to your soul, this is the moment to subscribe. By doing so, you make sure you will not miss the next chapters of this journey of knowledge. And more, by subscribing, you become part of a community of seekers who, just like you, are walking the path of awakening. So do not just watch, stay, and receive what your soul is already prepared to hear. One of the first things an awakened soul silently abandons is the prison of collective beliefs. Throughout life, we are shaped by systems that tell us what is right, what is wrong, what we should believe, and how we should live. These systems can be religious, social, cultural, or even familial. At first, they seem to provide safety. But over time, the awakened soul realizes that many of these beliefs are not universal truths, but structures created to maintain order and conformity. They act as invisible walls that limit how far the mind can go. Detachment does not mean despising traditions or denying history. It means recognizing that what once served as guidance has now become a prison. An awakened soul understands that belief and consciousness are not the same. Belief is repetition. Consciousness is direct experience. That is why, silently, people in the awakening process stop blindly following dogmas, external authorities, and imposed truths. They begin to trust more in their own perception, in their own connection with the sacred. What was once accepted without question is now filtered through intuition and expanded awareness. This detachment may cause estrangement among family, friends, or even groups that once served as reference points. But for the awakened soul, it is inevitable, because once consciousness expands, it can no longer return to the narrow space where it was once confined. If there is one element that sustains the collective reality more than any other, it is fear. Fear is the invisible foundation that fuels systems of control, limiting beliefs, and repetitive behaviors. It paralyzes, it makes people sick, and it keeps them trapped in an unexamined existence. It is not hard to see. Much of social communication, politics, and even advertising is built around fear-based narratives. Fear of scarcity, fear of rejection, fear of death. These ghosts push millions of people to keep chasing safety and external validation without ever touching the essence of who they truly are. But when a soul awakens, something changes deeply. It begins to see fear as a veil, an illusion that only has power as long as it is fed. Silently, that soul stops moving out of fear and starts choosing from a different foundation: trust. This trust is not naive, but comes from the realization that there is a greater order, a universal intelligence that sustains all life. When this perception takes root, fear loses its grip, and with it, many chains of the collective reality fall away. This is why awakened people are often seen as bold or even misunderstood. They stop following patterns driven by fear of judgment, stop consuming out of fear of scarcity, and free themselves from structures that use fear as fuel. The awakened soul understands, to live in fear is to live imprisoned, and for those who have tasted the freedom of inner truth, there is no way back. One of the most intriguing changes in the awakening process is realizing that reality is not fixed. Contrary to what we were taught, life does not unfold in a linear, predetermined way. Quantum physics already suggests that the universe unfolds into multiple possibilities, and consciousness is able to choose which one becomes manifest. This is why, when a soul awakens, life begins to transform in seemingly mysterious ways. Relationships shift, unexpected opportunities appear, and old patterns simply stop making sense. It is not magic, but the natural result of a vibrational change that attracts new experiences. Every thought, every emotion, every intention acts as a frequency that tunes the soul into a specific reality. When consciousness breaks free from collective programming, it stops vibrating in scarcity, fear, and repetition, and begins to align with higher possibilities. In practice, this means the person starts to create parallel realities. These realities are not distant or unreachable worlds, but different versions of life that become accessible when consciousness shifts frequency. It is like walking through invisible corridors. Each choice opens a door. Each vibration determines which room you enter. And this is where the silent stepping away takes on a deeper meaning. It is not just about leaving things behind, but about literally entering another version of reality where what no longer resonates simply ceases to exist. When a soul awakens, a period of withdrawal naturally follows. It is as if life quietly removes certain people, situations, and interests from the path to make space for a new perception. This withdrawal creates a kind of solitude which, far from being a punishment, can be understood as sacred solitude. In this silence, the soul learns to hear its own voice, to distinguish between what is essence and what is collective noise. It is in this retreat that many people discover meditation practices, deepen their connection with nature, and begin inner dialogues they had never experienced before. But here is an important warning. This sacred solitude must not be confused with radical isolation. Temporary withdrawal is part of the journey, but when taken to the extreme, it can become a dangerous mistake, leading to stagnation, sadness, or even spiritual arrogance. If you want to understand better how excessive isolation can become an obstacle on the path, I recommend watching the last video posted on this channel. There, we explored this topic in depth and explained why completely running away from the collective reality is not the true path of awakening. I'll leave the card up here so you can access it. So remember, sacred solitude is a portal, not a destination. It prepares the soul to return stronger and more conscious, able to live in the world without being of the world. The silent stepping away of awakened souls is not an abandonment of the world. On the contrary, it is a preparation. When the soul leaves behind what no longer resonates, it becomes free to take part in something greater, the building of a new collective consciousness. This consciousness does not arise from imposed rules or external institutions. It emerges from the sum of individuals who have chosen to live at a different frequency, people who cultivate compassion, authenticity, clarity, and spiritual responsibility. Each time a soul awakens and refuses to feed patterns of fear, consumption, or superficiality, it strengthens this new collective field. It is a silent yet powerful movement. It does not happen through violent revolution, but through a vibrational change that, little by little, reshapes the fabric of reality. A single awakened soul has the power to bring light to environments, inspire others, and transform the way groups function. This is the true mission, not to be lost in the collective reality, but also not to run away from it, to live in the world, yet radiate another way of being within it. That is how individual awakening becomes collective. In the end, the new consciousness will not be built by great leaders or rigid systems, but by millions of small, silent, and consistent gestures from people who have decided they will no longer remain asleep.